Hello and welcome back to I Completed 80s Music, your tour through the biggest, brightest and best songs of the most colourful decade in pop. I'm your host, the 80s Mixtaper, and today we get stuck into the back half of Playlist 29. And what an episode we have. We are taking you back to autumn 1981, and we're going to see Dave Stewart striking out on his own. We get Japan showing Duran Duran how it's done in a re-release. Depeche Mode drop a hit song and begin their ascendancy. And Altered Images wish us happy birthday, amongst others. As always, we can't actually play the songs on the pod due to copyright laws, but if you go to the episode description, you'll find playlist links there for both Spotify and Apple Music, plus a full track listing if you use a different system, or just have an absolutely massive vinyl collection. Anyway, let's get back to the music. Okay folks, let's talk about It's My Party, the 1981 single by Dave Stewart and Barbara Gaskin. It's the autumn of a year when the UK charts are a blender of Human League gloss, Adam and the Ants' pirate strut, and the delights that Soft Cell were cooking up. And right in the middle of it, a prog rock keyboardist who spent the better part of a decade noodling through Canterbury scene epics, drops a cover of Leslie Gore's 1963 sob story about a boy named Johnny ditching a birthday bash for son Judy. It shouldn't work. It spends 4 weeks at number 1 anyway, from October the 17th to November the 7th, logging a total of 13 weeks on the UK singles chart. That's the kind of sideways logic 1981 ran on. This is track 8, Playlist 29. To get here, you have to start with Dave Stewart. No, not the Eurythmics guy with the shades and the hair, although he is in the ether cooking up the Eurythmics at this point with Annie Lennox, but the one born David Lloyd Stewart on December the 30th, 1950, in Waterloo, South London. He picks up the organ young, joins a school covers band called the Southsiders, and by 17 he's in Uriel, a sight-leaning outfit with future gong wizard Steve Hillage on guitar and Mont Campbell on bass. They gig on the Isle of Wight in summer 1968. Hillage bails for university, and the band morphs into Egg, Dave's real proving ground. Egg cut 2 albums for Decca, Egg in 1970 and The Civil Surface in 1974, full of those intricate jazz-tinged prog workouts that sound like a math problem set to keyboards. In between, there's a one-off as Arzekel in 1969, a psychedelic cash-in that sells okay on the continent. Dave guests on Khan's Space Shoon in 1972, then jumps to Hatfield and the North in 1973, where the sound gets a bit softer, more melodic, with those signature Northettes harmonies floating over it all. That's where Barbara Gaskin enters the picture. She's been singing lead in the folk prog band Spyro Gyra since 1969, 3 albums on labels like B&C and Pegasus, touring Europe and the UK college circuit. By 1973, she's 1/3 of the Northettes, backing Hatfield alongside Anne Rosenthal and Amanda Parsons. Dave's on keys, Barbara's voice is that clear, unforced thread, weaving through tracks like There's a Man Going Round Taking Names from Hatfield's debut. The band folds in 1975, Dave drifts to Gong for some French gigs, then co-founds National Health in 1977 with Phil Miller and Alan Gowan, pulling in Bill Bruford for sessions before Pip Pile locks in on drums. It's peak Canterbury, angular, collaborative, a bit insular. Dave sticks with Bruford's solo band through 1980, 3 albums and 2 US tours, honing that fusion edge. But 1980 hits, Bruford raps, and Dave's at a crossroads. He forms Rapid Eye Movement, REM for short, and no, not that REM, not Michael Stipe Everybody Hurts REM. It's rougher than National Health, as Jazzic put it later, a lot rougher, very structured but performed in a very anarchic way. No album materialises, just some bootleg French tapes. Dave pivots solo, cuts a heavy electronic take on Jimmy Ruffin's What Becomes of the Broken Hearted with Colin Blunstone on vocals. Released in early 81, it cracks the UK top 20 at number 13, even hits number 34 in Australia, proof he can do pop without selling out. Enter Barbara again. They've stayed in touch, orbiting the same scene. In 1981, they team up properly, starting with covers because, as Dave says, when we made a record, we did it for fun, we did it for a laugh. It's My Party is one of the first two tracks they lay down, alongside an experimental bit sparked by Prophet 5 synth noises. Recorded and mixed June and July 1981 at Matrix Studios in London, it's Dave producing, Barbara singing lead. The arrangement swaps Gore's bubblegum anguish for something spectral, layers of synth washes, a pulsing bass line that feels like it's underwater, and Barbara's voice, high, almost disembodied, turning the petulance into the kind of dreamy resignation. It's 3 minutes and 47 of new wave shimmer, the kind that slots right between early OMD and a slowed down Kate Bush demo. They press it on their own Broken Records imprint. Dave fronts the studio costs out of pocket to keep the masters. Then they license it to Stiff for distribution. Labels had turned it down left and right. Stiff, though, that scrappy punk pop factory, sees the quirk. Released September the 18th, 1981, it enters the UK chart at number 58, climbs steady, number 17, and then a week later, number 1. It holds the top for 4 weeks. Sales push past 1 million worldwide, though the US shrugs it at number 72. Dave, looking back in a 2019 Hit Channel interview, still sounds gobsmacked. Quote, no way. I was absolutely shocked that it was so popular. We thought it would be funny to record this song. Barbara did a really nice vocal, and it just gave me a kind of kick to do it. It was such a different thing from what I had been doing, end quote. He credits Stiff's boss. We were lucky that we hooked up with Stiff Records, who thought the singles were worth releasing. The boss of Stiff thought those singles were good, gave us what we wanted, and played his part in getting It's My Party to number 1. So yeah, it was astonishing. I still can't actually believe it happened. In a 2019 fanzine chat, he adds, it was for a laugh when they started in 1980, but the hit forced their hand. We were suddenly in a position where we needed to record new songs in a hurry. The rush yields more covers at first. I'm in a Different World, busy doing nothing, but they settle into originals across 7 albums, from Up From the Dark in 1982 to Star Clocks in 2018. Occasional live sets with guitarists like Andy Reynolds or Baron Matthews, even Garen Harrison on drums for a 2001 Tokyo show. Dave keeps busy producing National Health's Memorial for Gowan in 1981, Neil's heavy concept album for Nigel Planer, Bruford's Earthworks debut. He scores TV, the Old Grey Whistle Test theme in the mid-1980s, and the Northern Ireland drama Lost Belongings. Later, strings and choirs for Anathema and Porcupine Tree, music theory books like Introducing the Dots in 1980. Barbara guests on Egg's final album, Peter Blegvad's The Naked Shakespeare, Jane Weedlin's Tangled. Dave Stewart and Barbara Gaskin stayed together over that time and finally married in 2021. It's My Party didn't erase Dave's prog roots, it just parked them in a glittery lay-by for a bit. In a scene chewing its own tail, it proved you could drag a 60s relic into the synth dawn and make it glow. 4 weeks at number 1 says the party was theirs, tears and all. For track 9, one of my favourites. We are back with a band you either consider pioneers of synth pop or Roxy Music wannabes. I lean towards the former. Last time we hung out with Japan, we were knee-deep in Gentlemen Take Polaroids, way back in episode 14.5. That 1980 title track where David Sylvian and the crew were already flexing their art school cool, all slinky synths, and that baritone croon that could make a rainy London afternoon feel like a velvet lounge. It was the album that got them signed to Virgin after ditching Hansa, and it hinted at the bigger things coming with Tin Drum. But today, we're rewinding just a smidge to circle back to something from their Hansa catalogue, and it got a second life, the 1981 single Quiet Life. Originally, the title track of their 1979 album of the same name. This one's a sneaky pivot point for the band, Japan ditching their glam snarls for something sleeker, more electronic, like they traded their leather jackets for silk shirts overnight. It's got that shimmying disco pop rhythm, Sylvian's lyrics nodding to the band's real-life label woes, and a sequencer hook that feels like it's floating in from some alternative universe nightclub. Think of it as the moment Japan started sounding like the blueprint for the New Romantics, even if they hated being lumped in with that crowd. This is track 9, playlist 29. Every time that sequencer kicks in, it's like the future knocking on 1979's door. And that middle section, when the horns kick in with the disco beat, that feels very much like Duran Duran. Okay, so Quiet Life drops as the title track on Japan's third album, recorded over the summer of 1979 at places like Air Studios in London, with John Punter behind the boards, the guy who'd worked with Roxy Music, so no wonder it has that polished sheen. The band was in a weird spot. Their first two albums, Adolescent Sex and Obscure Alternatives, were all glam funk attitudes, sneering vocals, and guitar riffs that owed a debt to Bowie and Bolan. But by Quiet Life, they're leaning hard into synths, fretless bass grooves from Mick Karn that slither like eels, and Steve Jansen's drums keeping it tight but airy. Sylvian later called this their most collaborative record, before he started calling all the shots. Lyrically, it's Sylvian venting about the grind, losing their US deal with Ariola America, Hansa breathing down their necks for a hit, the whole Here Comes the Quiet Life Again vibe that like they're bracing for obscurity. It's got this detached cool, like Sylvian's observing his own career from a balcony above a disco, cigarette in hand. The album hit shelves on December 1979 in places like Japan, the country, not the band, though they blew up there too, with fans mobbing their 1980 Budokan show like it was Beatlemania. The UK release slips to January 80, peaks at a disappointing number 72, and the single Quiet Life gets pushed overseas first. December 1979 in Japan, again the country, March 1980 in Germany and the Netherlands. In the UK, it's demoted to the B-side of their I Second That Emotion cover, which flops. Hansa drops them like a bad habit. They jump to Virgin, drop Gentlemen Take Polaroids in 1980, and then Tin Drum will drop late in 1981 and be a hit. But before that, that's when Hansa Smelling Money remixes and reissues Quiet Life as a single in August 1981, now with a 3-minute and 34 edit for radio, and it climbs to number 19 in the UK, their first top 20 hit. They even lip-synced it on Top of the Pops, looking impossibly poised. Critics were split back then. NME called the album a Roxy Music rip-off, but Sounds gave it 4 stars, and retrospectively, it's hailed as a proto-new romantic gem, one of the first big British synth pop shifts, right up there with early OMD or Human League. Pitchfork nailed it in a reissue review. It's Japan straining against their old limits, full of possibility, blending disco pulse with urban ennui. The whole thing feels like a bridge from the post-punk grit to the glossy 80s ahead. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, the parallels with Duran Duran's Planet Earth. Because if you're Japan in 1981, watching these Birmingham lads explode, it must have felt like seeing your homework copied and turned in for an A+. Duran's debut single drops February 1981, same year as the Quiet Life reissue, and it peaks at number 12 in the UK, number 8 in Australia. Recorded at Red Bus Studios with Colin Thurston producing, who'd later do Tin Drum for Japan, fun fact. It's got that sequence Prophet 5 intro that straight up echoes Quiet Life's keyboard pulse. Critics like The Guardian's Jeremy Allen called it a direct debt. Both tracks fuse disco rhythms with synth flair. Quiet Life with its shimmying beat and Sylvian's baritone musing on Quiet Desperation. Planet Earth with Simon Le Bon's wide-eyed lyrics about awakening to the world, like only came outside to watch the night fall with the rain. Duran's got that new romantic nod, like some new romantic looking for the TV sound, inspired by a sounds piece on Spandau Ballet. Basslines thump similarly, the drums lock in tight, and the overall vibe is optimistic futurism meets club energy. Fans have yelled rip-off for decades. Message boards from the 90s onward accused Duran of lifting Japan's look, the makeup and the hair, and sound, with Planet Earth as Exhibit A for cloning Quiet Life. Even Duran Duran admits the influence. Nick Rhodes spun Japan records in clubs, and bassist John Taylor cited them as a rhythm section muse. But here's the kicker. Japan pioneered that sleek, arty synth-pop glow-up, evolving from punk snarls to something enigmatic and thoughtful. absorbing Bowie, Eno, Kraftwerk, even Velvet Underground covers on Quiet Life. So why did Duran Duran lap them in popularity, becoming MTV darlings with stadium tours and hits like Hungry Like the Wolf, while Japan stayed cult favourites and split by 1982? For starters, Duran's music was straight up catchier, euphoric, melodic, designed for radio and dance floors, blending punk's edge with disco's groove in a way that screamed fun rather than introspection. Japan's stuff was sparse and alienating in its coolness, with Sylvian's brooding lyrics chasing spiritual depth over hooks. Management played a role too. Japan's Simon Napier Bell pushed for hits but clashed with their arty vibe, and others like Billy Bragg labelled them all style over content. Duran's Barrow Brothers built them like a brand, exotic videos in Sri Lanka, yacht parties, tying into the yuppie 80s fantasy and nailing MTV's rise. Plus, Duran Duran had that working class hustle mixed with ambition, turning influences including Japan into global anthems, while Japan internalised tensions. Sylvian resisting the beautiful man tag, the band fracturing over direction. Duran Duran scored US hits, Japan never cracked the Billboard Hot 100. It's like Japan built the sleek spaceship, but Duran Duran figured out how to sell tickets to the ride. In the end, Quiet Life is that underdog single that whispers what the 80s would become, arguably ahead of its time given its late 70s release. Elegant, elusive, before the decade roared into full colour excess. Japan got there first, but Duran Duran made it a party. So, let's stay with the synth-soaked trenches of 1981. And if you caught our last dive into Depeche Mode with New Life, you know these Basildon boys were already buzzing like a faulty Casio keyboard. That track scraped into the UK Top 20 at number 11, giving them their first real whiff of chart air after the modest flop of Dreaming of Me. But now, just a few months later, here comes Just Can't Get Enough, the third single off their debut album Speak and Spell. Written by Vince Clarke, this one's got that relentless bubbly synth hook that sticks in your head like gum on a pub floor. It's pure, unadulterated pop fizz, clocking in at about 3.5 minutes of what sounds like a Casio having the time of its life. Clarke even copped to nicking the rhythm idea from Spandau Ballets to cut a long story short. Anyway, enough setup, let's spin this thing and let it do the talking. This is track 10. Depeche Mode in 81, four lads from Essex, Clarke on keys and songs, Dave Garn on vocals with that boyish croon, Martin Gore looking like he wandered in from a school play, and Andy Fletcher holding down the fort on bass synth, or whatever they handed him. They'd been gigging around places like the Crocs Disco in Rayleigh, building a local following with their all-electronic setup. No guitars in sight, which was still a bit of a unique oddity back then. Daniel Miller from Mute Records spotted them at a London club, signed them on the spot. Quickly, they're cranking out the singles. Now, New Life got them on top of the pops in June 81, which was huge. It peaked at number 11, sold decently, but it was Just Can't Get Enough, dropping in September, that really cranked the dial. This one climbed to number 8 on the UK singles chart, their first top 10 entry, and hung around for weeks. It even topped the UK indie chart, which mattered back when indie meant something scrappier than a Spotify playlist. Overseas, it nibbled at the edges. Number 4 in Australia by early 82, 16 in Ireland, 14 in Sweden, and it cracked the US Billboard Hot Dance Club chart at 26, which for a bunch of Brits with no stateside push was like planting a flag on the moon. What made it click? For starters, the timing was spot on. The UK was knee-deep in the new romantic scene, Duran Duran, Human League, all that glossy video-ready pop. But Depeche Mode brought a rawer, more accessible edge. No frilly shirts or yacht rock ambitions, just straight-up electronic joy. The press was mixed. Smash Hits called it a sound enough follow-up to New Life, good for dancing but not earth-shattering. And Record World dug the music box synthesizers and catchy melody. But the punters loved it. Clubs latched on, radio played it, and suddenly these guys are quitting their day jobs. Garn ditched his window dressing gig, Gore bailed on banking, Fletcher left insurance. Hell, even Clark the architect stuck around long enough to see the payoff before bolting in December to form Yazoo with Alison Moyet. Speak and Spell rode its coattails to number 10 on the UK albums chart, shifting over 300,000 copies in Britain alone by year's end. Tours kicked off, UK, Europe, even a dip into the US, and they started packing venues that weren't just mates and locals. It set the template for their sound, infectious hooks over cold machines, with lyrics that sound simple but hit that sweet spot of obsession and fun. When I'm with you, baby, I go out of my head and I just can't get enough. It's basically a Sugar Rush in verse form, no deep dives into existential dread yet. They'd come later with Gore taking the reins. But let's not sugarcoat it, success brought cracks. Clark left right after the album, citing the grind of touring and a desire for something fresh. Yazoo's Only You dropped the next year and outcharted anything Depeche Mode had done so far, which must have stung. Still, Just Can't Get Enough proved they could survive the hype. It became a live staple, played to this day, and culturally it's embedded now. Football chants for Celtic and Liverpool twist the chorus into terraced anthems. The Saturdays covered it for Comic Relief in 2009 and hit number 2, and it's popped up in ads, movies, you name it. Hindsight's funny though. In 81, this was just a hit single from a band figuring it out, but it shoved them towards stardom by showing synth pop could be massive without guitars or attitude. No more part-time dreams. This was the real deal. Depeche Mode would darken up, get weirder, sell out stadiums worldwide. But it all traces back to that dun 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 dun. If New Life cracked the door, this one kicked it wide open. Can't get enough? Guilty as charged. For track 11, let's slip back into the last vestiges of ska, joining again with Buster Blood Vessel and Bad Manners. Their June 1981 romp through the Can-Can, that bonkers cover of Offenbach's classic, the one where Buster Blood Vessel and the crew turned a 19th century orchestral sprint into a ska-fueled party banger that parked itself at number 3 on the UK charts for 4 solid weeks. It was pure chaos, horns blasting, Buster's tongue flapping like a flag in a hurricane, the whole thing engineered to make you spill your pint while skanking across the living room. But today we're shifting gears, or maybe downshifting, really, into something a little bit more mellow from the same album. We're talking Walking in the Sunshine, the second single of Gosh, It's Bad Manners, dropped in September 1981. This one's got that easy sway, the kind that doesn't demand you jump around, but invites you to nod along, maybe with a cold one in hand. It's not the band's usual full-throttle frenzy. Instead, it's got this bass-driven groove that pulls you in slow and steady. And full disclosure, this one ranks high on my personal Bad Manners playlist for exactly that reason. Those deeper, reggae-tinged bass lines that feel like they're rumbling right up from the earth's core. It feels much more personal. But I get it, it's not everyone's go-to. A lot of fans reach for the rowdier stuff first. Anyway, let's spin it and see where it takes us. Press play now. That's David Farron on bass and Brian Chewett on drums, laying down a foundation that's got more give than your average ska stomp. It's got this ambling pace, clocking in at about 3 minutes and 26, and the whole thing feels like Bad Manners decided to trade their pogo sticks for a thoughtful stroll. But let's back up and investigate this beast properly, because if Can Can was the band's invitation to a wild knees up, Walking in the Sunshine is the morning after. First off, context for those new to the pod. Bad Manners were riding high in 81. Formed back in 76 in North London by a bunch of schoolmates, they exploded onto the two-tone scene with that perfect mix of ska revival energy and sheer absurdity. By the time Gosh It's Bad Manners hit shelves in September, they'd already notched a string of chart climbers. Lip Up Fatty at 15, Special Brew at 3, Lorraine at 21, Just a Feeling at 13. The album itself became their biggest seller, cracking the top 20 at number 18 on the UK albums chart. Produced by Roger Lomas, who'd helmed their Olea stuff and knew how to capture Buster's larger-than-life persona, it was a mishmash of originals and covers, but Walking in the Sunshine stands out as a band-penned original, credited collectively to the group. Released as a 7-inch on Magnet Records, and a 12-inch adding an extended mix. It hit stores just as autumn was creeping in. Perfect timing for a tune about chasing rays. Chart-wise, it did solid business. Debuted on the UK singles chart September the 26th, peaked at number 10 and hung around for a bit, even nabbing 11 in Ireland. Not their absolute peak, that honour goes to joints like Special Brew or Can Can, but respectable, especially in a year crammed with synth-pop and new wave distractions. Bad Manners as a whole were chart fixtures back then, racking up 111 weeks in the UK top 75 between 1980 and 83. Yet this song, it doesn't get the same love in retrospectives. Fans on forums and social media often shout out Lip Up Fatty or My Girl Lollipop, their 82 cover that hit number 9, as the ones that get the dance floor moving. Walking in the Sunshine pops up in reactions as brilliant or a hidden gem, but it's not the default pick. Why? Probably because it dials back the manic energy that defined their rep. Buster's known for his over-the-top antics, shaved head, massive frame, that infamous tongue-waggling routine that made him a top-of-the-pop staple. They performed this one on the show in October 81, miming away, but the track itself, it's got restraint. It's almost, dare I say, sophisticated. And that's where the reggae creeps in. Bad Manners was ska through and through, part of that two-tone wave alongside the Specials and Madness. But ska's roots are in reggae, and this song leans hard into that heritage. Critics at the time picked up on it. One review called it a listless, limber reggae item, griping that it lacked the band's usual exuberance and comparing them unfavourably to UB40's smoother sound. Another in Smash Hits flipped the script, praising its shift. Listen to that bass. Farron's lines aren't just holding down the fort, they're the star, rumbling low and insistent, walking the walk, giving the whole thing this bassier, dubbier vibe than, say, the hyper Can Can. It's got an ambling reggae gait, as one write-up put it, slow enough to let the horns punctuate without overwhelming. Buster's vocals, gravelly as ever, delivering lines like "just a walking in the sunshine," try to keep from going under. "I think I'll drink a little red wine, ain't no use to sit and wonder," with that wink, like he's daring you not to smile. It's optimistic without being saccharine, a little defiant, perfect for 81, when the UK was slogging through recession and riots. In a decade where ska was often the soundtrack to rebellion, light, fun, frantic, a bit rude, this track feels like Bad Manners growing up, just a tad. Not that they ever fully did. Buster kept the clowning going, touring relentlessly, even after the hits dried up. Walking in the Sunshine captures that realisation, from pure party anthems to something with a bit more groove under the hood. It's why I rate it so high. Those reggae bass vibes make it replayable, the kind of song that soundtracks a reflective drive rather than a mosh pit. Underrated? Absolutely. In fan polls it might not top the list, but pop it on a sunny day and tell me it doesn't hit different. Of course, Bad Manners' whole shtick was never about polish. They were the rowdy cousins at the two-tone family reunion, the ones who'd spike the punch and moon the photographer. This single, it's them sneaking in a moment of chill amid the mayhem, and it works because it's authentic. But it also speaks to the end of the two-tone movement. The Selector are done, the Specials split, and this is the last original Bad Manners take we'll see. Only Madness will continue to carry the torch. But this song, no frills, just solid songwriting from a band that knew how to blend Jamaican roots with British cheek. If Can Can was the sprint, this is the stroll, and sometimes that's exactly what you need. For our penultimate track today, we're zeroing in on a single that snuck into the charts like a sugar rush at a kid's party. Happy Birthday by Altered Images. This one's got that fizzy, post-punk pop energy that feels like it was brewed in a Glasgow basement, all angular guitars and a childish vocal delivery that could pierce through fog. It's the kind of song that hits you with a chorus so insistent you'll be humming it while brushing your teeth. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's just drop the needle on this thing and let it go. This is track 12. Happy Birthday landed in September 1981, courtesy of this Scottish outfit called Altered Images, and it climbed all the way to number 2 on the UK singles chart by October, where it stubbornly parked for 3 whole weeks. We're talking the 15th best-selling single of the year, right behind Soft Cell's Tainted Love, and ahead of whatever Adam and the Ants were dandying about. It even cracked the top 3 in Ireland and made waves in South Africa, which is pretty good for a band that started out sounding like they were auditioning for a Susie and the Banshees tribute act. The band formed in Glasgow back in 1979, a bunch of teenagers fresh out the punk scene. Frontwoman Claire Grogan, born in 1962, so she was all of 19 when this dropped, was the star of the show, her yelpy, helium-high vocals that could shift from cute to chaotic in a heartbeat. She wasn't just singing, she was acting too, landing a lead role in the 1981 film Gregory's Girl, directed by Bill Forsyth, where she played a soccer-playing teen who upends a boy's world. That movie gig probably helped sling the band into the spotlight, but don't kid yourself, the music stood on its own. The lineup, Grogan on vocals, Gerard Caesar McNulty on guitar, he'd later bail to form The Wake, Johnny McKellen on bass, who'd go on to bigger things with Texas, Tony McDade on guitar, and Michael Titch Anderson on drums. They met through the Susie and the Banshees fan club, which explains the early post-punk edge. But by the time Happy Birthday rolled around, they'd polished it up into something more pop-friendly, thanks in part to producer Steve Severin from the Banshees himself. McKellen reportedly came up with the idea for the song after realising that an original tune called Happy Birthday might just have legs in the chart. Smart move considering the traditional version's been crooned in every language under the sun. The song kicks off with that intro, that xylophone riff so unique. Then Grogan comes in with her Happy Birthday hook, delivered in a voice that's equal parts pixie and punk rocker. It's got this manic energy, like she's wishing you well but also daring you to keep up. The lyrics, pretty surreal on the surface. Happy birthday in a hot bath to those nice nights. I remember always, I got such a fright, seeing them in my dark cupboard with my great big cake. But listen closer and there's a layer of irony or maybe even sarcasm bubbling under. Is this a genuine celebration or is Grogan poking fun at the whole birthday ritual? The way she yelps and stretches those syllables, it feels less like Hallmark and more like a party where the cake's spiked. And when that chorus flips the script, if they were me and I was you and I was you, if they were me and I was you, would you like a present too? It's like a philosophical riddle wrapped in a pop song, questioning empathy or swaps an identity over birthday gifts. Musically, it's a masterpiece in early 80s new wave economy. Clocking in at just over 3 minutes, it doesn't waste a second. The verses build tension with those jagged guitar riffs, courtesy of McNulty and McDade, while Anderson's drums keep it propulsive, all floor toms and snappy snares. Severin's production gives it a shadowy vibe like the band still nodding to their post-punk roots, even as they chase pop radio. And that bridge, pure proto-pop tease. Chart-wise, this was their breakthrough. Before Happy Birthday, Altered Images had a couple of indie singles like Dead Pop Stars that flirted with the edges but didn't crack the big time. This one changed everything, propelling their debut album, also called Happy Birthday, to number 26 on the UK Albums Chart, where it hung around for 21 weeks and moved about 60,000 copies. Not thriller numbers, but solid for a band that started in a fan club. What makes Happy Birthday stick in the 80s canon though? I guess it's that blend of innocence and edge. Grogan's voice is the secret weapon, high-pitched and girlish, but with a bite that says she's no pushover. In a decade full of synth-heavy anthems and macho posturing, here's a track fronted by a teenage actress from Scotland, turning a universal phrase into something uniquely weird. It captured the moment when post-punk was morphing into new pop, before the hair got too big and the shoulder pads took over. Think about the context. 81 was the year of MTV's launch, the royal wedding of Charles and Diana, and the Rubik's Cube craze. Happy Birthday fits right in, colourful, puzzling, and impossible to ignore. Critics at the time dug it, mostly. The album got props for its energy, though some griped about the production being a tad murky. But the single, undeniable hit. It even got a nod in later years, covered by bands, sampled here and there, a staple on 80s compilations. Grogan herself reflected on it in interviews, saying punk changed her life, opening doors from the exploited to this bubbly pop moment. The band wouldn't last forever. They shifted to slicker sounds on their later albums like Pinky Blue in '82, with hits like I Could Be Happy, which we'll definitely hear on this pod. But by '83 they'd called it quits after Bite. Grogan kept acting, popping up in stuff like Red Dwarf as Christine Kochanski, of course, and Skins, while McKellen formed Texas, scoring massive success in the '90s. In the end, Happy Birthday is a snapshot of youthful exuberance crashing into the charts. It's fun, it's frantic, and yeah, it's got that wit built in. Grogan's delivery alone sells it as more than just a novelty. So, for our final track for playlist 29, we've tangled with Madness a few times already on this pod, those Camden Town ska revivalists who turned pub energy into pop gold. Last time, we unpacked Grey Day in episode 23, that moody little number from spring '81, where Suggs sounds like he's narrating the death of a lonely man, all minor keys and existential dread, wrapped in a saxophone hug. It hit number 4 in the UK, a solid win for the band's third album, 7, which they mostly cut in the Bahamas because why not? Swap London fog for a Caribbean sun and see what happens. But Madness weren't about to linger in the gloom. By September '81 they dropped Shut Up, the second single from 7, and it's like they cranked the dial back to their nutty default. This one's a brisk, cheeky tale of a petty crook spinning yarns to dodge the law, all delivered over that signature Madness shuffle, horns popping, piano tinkling, and a guitar solo that sneaks in like an uninvited guest at a heist. It's 3 minutes and change of pure narrative flair, peaking at number 7 in the UK charts and hanging around for 10 weeks. Silver certification too, which meant 250,000 Brits couldn't resist its charm. Written by Suggs and guitarist Chris Foreman, it's got that storytelling punch Madness honed early on, but with a sharper edge than their debut stuff. No wonder, it slotted right into their live sets and compilations like Complete Madness down the line. This is track 13, our final track today. And I said ska was on its last legs. Well, maybe that's true. This blends ska, soul, and even that bizarre Ennio Morricone Weskin-esque interlude. Those piano stabs from Mike Barson, urgent and insistent, setting up Suggs to launch into his monologue. I tell you, I didn't do it because I wasn't there. Don't blame me, it just isn't fair. Right away, you're in the head of this hapless burglar, pleading his case to a judge or maybe just himself. It's all denial and deflection, swearing he's a reformed character, blaming bad company. Foreman and Suggs cook this up, and it's classic Madness, everyday bloke drama turned into a ska pop romp. The phrase "shut up" doesn't even show up in the final lyrics. Apparently it was in an early draft, some extra verse that got trimmed, but the title stuck because, well, it captures the essence. Imagine the crook yelling at it at cops as the handcuffs are applied. Musically, it's a step up from their rawer early days. By '81, Madness had levelled up their production game. They recorded most of 7 at Compass Point Studios in Nassau, that legendary spot where Grace Jones and the Stones did sessions. Co-producers Clive Langer and Alan Winstanley, who'd become their go-to guys, polished it without sanding off the edges. The album version stretched to 4 minutes and 5, giving more room for the instrumental breaks, but the single tightens it for radio punch. Those horns layer in like an accomplice, building to Foreman's guitar solo around the 2-minute mark. Coming off Grey Day, which was this introspective curveball, with Suggs crooning about mental fog, Shut Up feels like the band shaking it off and getting back to mischief. 7 as a whole marks their peak ska phase before they veered more pop with the rise and fall in '82. It hit number 5 on the UK albums chart, gold status, and Shut Up was the engine pulling it along. Think about where Madness sat in '81. Post-punk was fading, new romantic stuff like Duran Duran was rising, but these guys were holding the fort for Two-Tone's second wave. They started as the Invaders in '79, morphed into Madness, and by now they were regulars on Top of the Pops, nutty dancing and all. Shut Up got them there twice, first in suits looking like wide boys, then in a bizarre setup with stuffed animals like they were babysitting a zoo. The video though, pure gold. It's a slapstick caper with a band of cops chasing Suggs, who's playing this shady used car salesman type. Peak moment, Foreman shredding that solo on a guitar which he borrowed from Dave Hill of Slade. Hill had it custom made, all flash and no subtlety, perfect for Madness's tongue-in-cheek vibe. It's chaotic, low-budget fun, Suggs mugging for the camera, no CGI, just pratfalls and props, echoing their roots in British comedy like the Carry On films, or even Monty Python's absurdity. Lyrically, it's sharper than it lets on. Suggs drew from his own rough-and-tumble youth growing up in London, absent dad, bouncing between homes. He said in interviews that songs like this pull from street life, the kind of blokes you'd meet in a pub spinning tall tales. It's funny, but there's a bite. The Crook's excuses mirror real-world dodgers, from petty thieves to politicians. Madness always snuck in that social edge without preaching. Think baggy trousers, mocking school days, or embarrassment, tackling teen pregnancy. Here it's crime as comedy, but grounded in the economic squeeze of Thatcher's Britain, where unemployment was spiking and kids like the Madness crew were hustling to make it. Chart-wise, number 7 was no slouch, sandwiched between Soft Cell's Tainted Love at the top and Adam the Ant still hanging around. In the Grand Madness arc, Shut Up captures them at their most assured, post-debut frenzy, pre-American push. They tried cracking the US with a self-titled compilation in '83, including this track, but it didn't stick like in the UK. Stateside they were more of a cult thing, thanks to MTV playing the video on rotation. But back home, it solidified their run, 4 top 10 singles in '81 alone. Suggs' voice, that deadpan baritone, sells the whole package, equal parts storyteller and straight man. If Grade A showed their depth, Shut Up reminded everyone they were fun first. It's the kind of song that sticks because it's vivid. You can picture the courtroom, the chase, the smirk on the Crook's face. Madness evolved after this. Smoother hits like Our House in '82, but tracks like Shut Up are the backbone. Pure energy with a wink. Next time we hit Madness, it'll be something from their Imperial phase. But for now, let's appreciate this gem for what it is. A 3-minute alibi that holds up 40 years later. So that's all she wrote on playlist 29. So what's up next on playlist 30? Well, hopefully I'll have shed this god-awful cough by the time it's released. But in terms of music, it's one of the more bonkers playlists. We get the Police changing up their repertoire with Invisible Sun. We get Billy Squier with that pole dance classic, The Stroke. Susie going off-piste with Mad-Eyed Screamer, Tom Tom Club blowing everyone's minds with Genius of Love, and talking of the L word, Squeeze is labelled with love, to name but a few. And as for the second half, well, you'll have to wait and see. As always, if you could leave a review or 5-star rating on your podcast platform of choice, it all helps. But until next time, have a great week, take care.